Good evening. I call this May 28th, 2020 work session of the Morrisville Town Council to order. Thank you to those watching via live stream and those who are watching the recording of this meeting. To maintain the safety of town residents, staff, and the Town Council while following guidelines related to social distancing and public gatherings of less than 10 people indoors, this meeting is being facilitated electronically via Teams live meeting. There are 3 council members present tonight. We expect Councilmember Rao to arrive momentarily in the council chambers, and 3 participating virtually from home to ensure that proper distancing and room capacity directives are followed. All council members will be able to fully participate in this evening's work. Council chambers have been thoroughly cleaned prior to use this evening. All staff and elected officials present have access to a variety of PPE and hand sanitizer stationed at multiple locations throughout Town Hall. While the meeting is not physically open to the public, active citizen participation is always important to Town Council. This meeting is being streamed simultaneously on both the Town of Morrisville Facebook page and the Town of Morrisville website. On June 1st, a video of this meeting will be uploaded to www.townofmorrisville.org/government/live-video. A link to this page will also be placed on Town of Morrisville social media pages. Please visit www.townofmorrisville.org for updates regarding future Town Council meetings, or feel free to email townclerk@townofmorrisville.org with any questions. At this time, I'll ask Eric Smith, Town Clerk, to conduct a roll call of council members.
Thank you, Mayor Cawley. Mayor Cawley.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Fender.
Present.
Councilmember Garamella.
Present.
Councilmember Rao. Councilmember Robati.
Present.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Present.
All council is present with the exception of Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, sir. We have one action item tonight, a motion to invoke Rule 19. Is there a motion and second on the motion to invoke Rule 19?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Rabati. Town Clerk Smith will now facilitate our roll call vote.
Councilmember Fender.
Aye.
Councilmember Garamella.
Aye.
Councilmember Robati.
Aye.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Cawley.
Aye.
The motion to invoke Rule 19 passes.
Thank you, sir. We have one work session this evening to discuss the proposed annual operating budget. I will now recognize Town Manager Page to begin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'll start with referencing some items that were emailed to you electronically last night, as well as hard copies that have been placed at your places for those that are in council chambers. We have also provided some additional items this evening, including...
Excuse me, we
Having
can't
difficulty
hear
hearing you.
Town Manager Page.
I guess that's because I need to turn on my microphone. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start all over. Thank you. What I will be starting our discussion with this evening is some information that was shared with council members last night electronically as a result of our Tuesday work session discussion. Hard copies have been provided to council members that are present, and Jeannie has provided some additional information that we will cover this evening in the FAQs and an updated budget portal comments. The information that I have provided and that we'll talk about first are 4 additional scenarios that were in large part based on the substance of discussion from last Tuesday. I have resisted the temptation to take our scenario modeling all the way to Z, although I was challenged a little bit by staff to do so. But we have 4 additional scenarios to cover with you this evening. It should be quick and easy to do so. For reference, I have also incorporated 4 scenarios the council has already seen before, which were the original proposed budget, a preferred alternative budget at a 36.5-cent tax rate, and 2 scenarios at the 35.5-cent tax rate, which is where council focused their discussion at the Tuesday meeting. In addition to those scenarios and asking for an additional look at those items, I was asked to model an in-between at 36 cents, which is a 3.5-cent adjustment over the revenue neutral tax rate. The other adjustment that we have made that is not as obvious that I want to talk with council were two adjustments that we made to our revenues, which relate to two specific items of expenditures that were included in the budget. The first one was a recommendation to fund $251,000 of the Smart Shuttle capital costs out of the Roadway and Transportation Reserve. That has been modified to have that expenditure covered by general fund resources, which allows that Roadway and Transportation Reserve to remain intact and not include that item. There were also two items related to intersection studies and improvements that totaled $225,000 that were also recommended for funding out of the Roadway Transportation Reserve, and that has been adjusted, and staff is proposing the use of some currently restricted streets PIL money that is part of our fund balance. We haven't talked a lot about that, so I want to just cover it very briefly. Very similar to Parkland payment in lieu, when development comes into the town and they have some kind of impact, partial at where they are developing, and according to a model, other traffic impacts, we collect a pro rata share or portion of their impact of development and reserve that to be accumulated for future streets improvements. We have been collecting those monies for a period of years. They are usually very small incremental amounts that do not add up to a large project, but we believe that we will be able to work with our town attorney and within the legislative guidelines for those monies to demonstrate improvement at intersections that benefit the town and would be a proper use of those funds. So we are recommending that substitute alternative revenue scenario for those items, and we would not do that until we have verified that we have a mechanism to do that and share that with town council. So revenues have been adjusted for those items. I'd like to cover first what is in every new scenario that was not in whole or in part in one of the scenarios that you have previously discussed. So this next set of items is in all of the proposed new scenarios. A sustainability coordinator for a full year, not a half-year increment. Cultural and food hub programmings as outlined in the original proposed budget, but that was forfeited in some of the alternative scenarios. Parks Wi-Fi in some scenarios and in the original proposed budget and now in all of these scenarios. Sustainability initiatives at the $50,000 level. Smart city initiatives at the $100,000 level. The Emergency Operations Center upfit to make that a fully functional EOC when we need it. The utility terrain vehicle for the fire department to allow emergency access on our greenways. Succession planning is not in any model. However, we would ask the council authorize the use of lapsed salary to advance that initiative. We have reintroduced a partial vehicle replacement. Many of the scenarios deferred $243,000 of vehicles. All models include the re-add back in of a public works crane body truck and the Parks and Recreation bus out of that original $243,000 that we recommend be deferred. And then all models lastly include a full penny increment, as we have been doing since this was initiated, for the Roadway Transportation and Reserve, and that is a $600,000 addition to all of the scenarios. Are there any questions about any of the adds into these scenarios that I can answer before I proceed? Okay. The next set of items are items that are in or out of some of the new models. And I'm just going to start at the top of the list and try to make this as easy as possible. In a 36-cent increment, we have introduced a new item. It is a hybrid of an item that was included in the originally proposed budget of the introduction of a traffic unit back into Morrisville Police Department. That included 4 police officers, and because of the vehicle and equipment purchases, it is always a significant add at that level, totaling over $500,000. This modified proposal to that would allow for some of those proposed activities to be initiated and expanded for our community, while active traffic management would still not be included. So prevention, education, traffic reconstruction activities, policy development, training and education on the equipment that continues to be in, yes, but school crossings and active working of traffic accidents, et cetera, would still be managed by our patrol unit. And in the 36-cent increment, that is a half-year implementation recommended. In a 36.5-cent increment, we would be able to fund the officer for the full year. That's a new item. Are there any specific questions I can answer about that item? Okay. The next item is different in different models is the Senior Center Recreation Program Specialist. In one of the 35.5-cent models and in the 36-cent model, there is a recommendation for a half-year implementation. In the other 2 models, there is a full-year implementation. As we start work on our senior center, knowing that it would not likely be operational till the second quarter, that would require our existing Parks and Recreation staff, as well as support from part-time staff, to man and get the senior center open as we brought in that staff member.
Can we, Anthony. We have a question.
Questions?
Okay, Councilmember Rabati with a question.
You could not hear me. Yeah, I have a question. Town Manager Page, I know that you said the other night that with the recruiting and hiring process, that we could expect a position that we open in January to be filled in July. And I was wondering if it would be possible if we approve a budget with that person in it for the second half of the year, if it would be possible to get the recruitment and hiring done prior to January or whenever the half year is, and then put that person on immediately at the half year.
Yes, ma'am. That could occur if with a caveat is we've talked with council about some implementation triggers. If you authorize the position that we could proceed without implementation triggers, yes, we could recruit and hire in advance, offer a start date, and start, I'll call it January 1. The alternative is to not authorize recruitment until after there was a review of our financial forecast that then would further delay bringing somebody on. In this particular case, with a half-year scenario, we could start recruiting in October or November and have that person in place at the beginning of the calendar year. And that would be the case with any half-year implementation. It is just a strategy timing of when the recruitment would occur based on the authorization for the salary.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson, did you have another question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. The next item that is a little bit different in some of the models is, again, another staff position. It's the athletic facilities maintenance technician. It's not a new discussion topic. In 3 of the models, there is a full year implementation recommended. We already have workload that gets delayed or deferred, in particular in our busier times of years. One of the 35.5-cent models only recommends a mid-year implementation for that position. And then the last item that is slightly different in the models is the funding towards the CIP capital reserve. We have been doing that at the $200,000 level in past years. 2 of the models include that full allocation. That is one of the 36-cent models and one of the 36.5-cent models. The other 36-cent model has a 1/2 allocation, and a 35.5-cent model has no allocation. And those are the only differences in these models. I think that illustrates a couple of things, which is there are trade-offs depending on what we're talking about. None are better or worse. They all have different impacts, but they all have some alignment to the discussion and the needs as expressed by council. All of the models do further reduce the amount of recurring expenses from the proposed and the proposed alternate budget, and increases a little bit more our reliance on some fund balance from the best practice we talked to you about at 3% to between 3 and 4%. And we talked at length about that and do feel that that is manageable, and we will refine that as we finish our fiscal year 20 year and do some of those other implementation triggers of monitoring the revenues on a more frequent than we usually do forecast. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
So I have one quick question. I'm sorry, got a frog in my throat. On that last item, you just talked about the fund balance. Tell me what our history has been, remind us all what our history has been on actually using that fund balance. I know we're in a different kind of world right now, but based on prior years, when we've allocated fund balance in the budget, how much have we used or not?
Okay. So in general, we tend not to need to use it based on our type of budgeting strategy, having conservative approaches with our revenues, in particular unpredictable sources. And I think there are probably only 2 years that I know of that we actually required the use at the end of the fiscal year of some amount, and it was nominal. I think 1 year it may have been up to maybe 600,000, and the other year that I'm thinking, which is more recent, maybe 150,000. I can certainly find that more specific detail information, but I think my general statement to you is we tend not to, and it's because of the methodology we use in order of building our budgets and starting with our revenue capacities.
Thank you, Jean.
And 3% is really a good rule of thumb that I learned a long time ago, because you're budgeting at 100%, your worst case, what your highest authorization that you'll give a town manager. 3% tends to be recoverable because you're really expecting some of your revenues to perform better most of the time. Now, in years like what we're dealing with now, there's a lot of uncertainty, but 3% is still a fairly good margin of error that we can work with and still be able to have a sustainable fund balance and future budgets.
Thank you.
It is 6:20. We'd like to welcome Councilmember Rao. Thank you. And now Councilmember Fender.
I had a question about the street payment in lieu fund. What's the balance in that fund currently?
It's about $3 million.
Okay. And what's the balance in the road and transportation?
The road and
I should know that, but
1.9?
yeah, hold on, I have it here.
Do you mean the full or the
So
undesignated?
road and transportation was 1.9. We have programmed 1.3, and that leaves about an undesignated balance of 546,000. And of that, we had proposed to use a fairly good portion of that remaining undesignated money. But with the new scenarios, it shifts that dependency from this type of reserve to your fund balance. So it still remains available.
So with the, using the street payments in lieu, is 1.3 million still programmed, or?
So two different funds.
Yes, two different.
We have never used any of the streets PIL. It has just been accumulating. The roadway transportation has been being added to at an approximate 1.1 cent equivalent. So it had accumulated up to 1.9 as of last year. In the current year's budget, we allocated 1.3 million of that for use. $1 million of it's for the Airport Boulevard extension project, and 300,000 is for traffic preemption.
Okay.
The Airport Boulevard has actually been expended. The traffic preemption, because we're partnering with Cary, technically has not been expended yet, so it is still in that account.
Okay.
It's,
So the
it's
1
spoken
million,
for.
so the 1 million that's been expended for the Airport Boulevard, was for the design, the pre-engineering?
Right away, yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, more than design, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, design always,
Doing the survey.
Yep.
yeah, it's more than just designing the roadway. It's your roadway right-of-way, any kind of environmental.
But it's the work that's already pretty much been done, right?
It is still in progress. You are
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do any of our virtual participants have any questions? Not at this time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Garamella, please.
Yes, Martha, I know, I hope we'll be friends after this. But I got to
don't
speak
like
it
the
out.
start of this.
From the start, I think I was closely watching it. It's very, very hard for me to add more than revenue neutral, and then I think we have come a long way. I really thank you giving us exact, how 1 cent scenario, 2 cent scenario, 3 cent scenarios have been playing out, and so my mind is kind of stuck towards the 3 cent scenario, but after you have given these options yesterday, the thing that was going at the back of my mind is I would like to see, I really thank you moving all the funds out of and clearing the path for the 1 cent for the transportation and making other provisions to go to the fund balance. But I like one scenario, which is, where is it? P, I think, where we are allocating some money, 200,000 into it, right? But what I was thinking was, if the council is amicable for, is if we put 0.5 cent more into the transportation, either you name it CIP reserve allocations, or basically put it more into transportation, and also add the 100,000 for the sidewalk improvement into this bucket, because from over the last 4 years we have accumulated more than $400,000 or $500,000, almost 100,000 or 150,000 every year, but we have not done any of those projects. So at least it's bucketed together, and it has some room that we can work on. And what we really want to show it to our people is we are vested in our transportation, and we want to work towards it. I know DOT, it will be hard, but at least the orphan sidewalks and some of the improvements that we are forging our way through. So I don't know if I said it correctly, but if we can, bottom line is that half cent can be put towards the CIP transportation allocation. So indirectly, I'm saying is you already have 100,000 allocated for the sidewalks. So all we are asking is the residual of the half cent to go into it.
So I need to clarify, there is no money for sidewalks in this proposed budget. In the current year budget, we have funds that we are using from a sidewalk reserve account to design some orphan projects. Engineering has put out the proposal to get the design services, and they're also starting to do some in-house to get those projects designed. The design of the projects will allow us to be better able to share with you the true cost of those projects, and then with the remaining funds that already exist in that reserve, and with anything else you would wish to appropriate, we could start the construction of the sidewalk segments. Not putting anything in this proposed budget is not stalling that progress right now.
No, absolutely, and that's what
Okay.
I mean to say, because I think we had two buckets there. One was a design last year, and I think we have been accumulating the sidewalk over the last 3 to 4 years for sure. And some have been used for the CGBD funds and some of the projects. But what I was saying is, like, if I recollect from the last year's budget, we had two allocations. One was for the design and one was for the construction. And if we can all pool those things into this transportation bucket, and then at least we have a bigger pool to work out of. So that way, at least the half cent, you're already putting 200,000 into it from the Plan B there, like or the Model P. So all I'm asking is bring that money in and put a half cent towards the transportation.
So let me try again. Are you suggesting that we take the $200,000 that is listed in scenario P that is proposed for the CIP transportation reserve and instead put it in the roadway and transportation reserve and add another $100,000?
Martha, you're breaking.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you're breaking up, Martha. Like, I don't know if it is from my side or your side, but I was not able to hear the whole thing.
Okay. I'll try again. Are you proposing that we take the $200,000 that's listed for the CIP reserve and instead put it in the roadway transportation reserve and find another $100,000 for a half cent?
Yes.
Okay, so that council comment, question?
Well, it's my understanding we're still looking to hear from Assistant Town Manager Jeannie Hooks on some more info before we get into the discussion about where we're going with which of these scenarios. So I'll ask Councilmember Garamella if it's okay that we'll revisit this when we're at that portion of the meeting. Does that sound okay, Councilmember Garamella?
Yes, that is okay.
Okay.
Because
fine. Yeah, I think any of these scenarios can be adjusted through our discussion as council. Yep. So at this point, I believe Councilmember Scroggins Johnson has a comment, and then also Councilmember Abadi.
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering if we could go to the FAQ before we go any further. I wanted to bring attention to this page 21, maybe. It's I'm looking at it on my screen, so I can't see what you're displaying right now if you're going to go to that. But it's the comparative sampling of the commercial properties where they show a supermarket I think it's page 21 of 45.
All right, you rolled up a PDF for her, correct? You have a PDF copy?
Yes, I emailed
All
it.
right.
So, Mayor, are we ready to move on to look at some of this data now? Or is everyone ready to do that?
I would like
the
to.
screen.
I would like to have this in everybody's mind as they're looking at this.
Okay.
And I think it's relevant at this time. At the last meeting, we reviewed all the residential examples, but we did not have a chance to look at the business examples. I think we need both half of the equation, and as we look at each of these scenarios. So that to me was really missing last time, and I'm so pleased that it's now available. So I'd like people to see that, and then I'll have comments after you're completed again.
So can I ask something? Martha was going to talk about the scenarios, and then Jeannie was going to talk about the additional information, FAQs. Do we want to finish up the scenarios?
I think that's where I was going. Could we at least hear what Councilmember Rabati's question is so we know if it's related to the scenarios or something else?
I think that's a good idea.
My question can wait, Martha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Scoggins Johnson is okay that we let Jeannie do her presentation on these items, and then.
I have one comment regarding the scenarios.
Okay, so would that be okay?
I really would like to show the commercial stuff. I think that's an input to this as opposed to a later.
I just have one very short comment on the scenarios that I would like to bring to all council members' attention, that in all of these new scenarios, there's the full allocation of $600K going to the roadway and transportation reserve fund. So in all those scenarios, there's already $600,000 going to roadway and transportation.
Thank you. So yes, Councilmember Scoggins Johnson, we're getting to that business now as we.
So here is my
other questions.
So here is my point. On Tuesday, we were talking about residences and the impact on residences. So we all had that in the back of our minds. But I want to point out that there are also residences in the commercial property values, specifically apartments. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the total impact of the tax value in the scenarios. So people don't necessarily live full-time in hotels and motels, but they do live in mixed use and apartments. And there are significant changes that are different than single-family homes and other neighborhoods. That's what I wanted to say, and we can continue on. But I could have just said it, but I really think it's better to see it in order to make my point. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Assistant to the Manager Hooks, since I don't think we have any other questions about scenarios, although Town Manager Page will be happy to answer them as we get to that point in our discussion. Ms. Hooks.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to talk to you. I see some of you and hear some of you. I'm going to go over tonight just the new information, just pointed out at a very high level, the new information that's in the FAQs, and I will get to the commercial item as a part of that conversation and give you a little bit more information to add on to what Councilmember Scoggins Johnson was pointing out, if that is okay. All right. So the information tonight in the FAQ is highlighted. So I've taken everything we've already previously given you and unhighlighted it and tried to identify the new information as of this version 3. Did you have something? Oh, okay. So the first question, question number 4, I just added a little bit more depth of information in terms of context. What we provided you the other evening was the residential information, and we did talk about it and went over the residential property values analysis, but I just provided a little bit more depth for context for question number 4. For question number 17, this talks about a summary of business data to better understand our business community demographics as it's compared to that commercial tax base component. Remember, we said our tax base has shifted to 55% commercial, 45% residential, and part of what I was going to share here tonight was that apartments are viewed as commercial. They're corporate, and therefore they are part of the commercial tax base and not the residential tax base, and I think that is a significant point that Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson was trying to iterate tonight. The information that I provide you is really from Wake County on the tax base components of that 55%. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Of that 55%, Wake County uses very specific categories of what makes up Morrisville's tax base components for both commercial and residential, and I provided you that information. As you can clearly see in the commercial category, commercial or typical businesses are 41%, but what Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson was saying is that also your second largest is apartments at 22%. And over on the other side for the residential tax base, your residential homes, that's your combination of all housing stock outside of apartments. So I took it a little bit further. Our GIS manager helped find some significant information, and we're still working on how we can get better at collecting and having this data available year over year to be able to measure how things change. But we found this information pretty interesting. It's a breakdown of specifically Morrisville businesses. It's from another source, not Wake County. It is not equivalent or it has any correlation to that 55% tax base component. Tax base is all about the value and how Wake County reports and does the revaluation and categorization of your tax value, your property values. This is strictly business information. What type of businesses are in Morrisville based on this particular data source? These are the number of businesses that it has recorded. This information is as current as of 2019, and it gives some reporting of employees and then the types of cells. And then it breaks down the total number of businesses as a percentage. And in here, you can extrapolate really from the categories what are some of the small businesses and what that demographic of Morrisville businesses might look like. This is just a first step. As I said, working with our GIS manager, we're going to try to tap into our data resources and have better reporting year over year. But this certainly will help answer or give some context of what does Morrisville businesses look like at this point at a very high level. Do we have a question?
I believe Councilmember Garamella has a question at this time.
Yeah. Yes. Jeannie, in this slide, it's very interesting slide. Where do you see the, IT positions in here? It's like, because is it under, because the amount of jobs that we have in perimeter itself is huge.
Scientific and tech services.
Technical services right here. So something I could provide based on this particular data source, I could add some definitions to it at some time in the future so that we know specifically what each one of these categories are. But at a glance, it clearly is calling out technical services in this particular category. It represents about 10% of this particular data set.
And how many jobs does it add up to? I don't have an Excel to add it, but these jobs, the reason I'm trying to see that we have close to 23,000 jobs in Morrisville, right? So this is not even equating all that into that if I just do a quick calculation or not.
Right. So this column here indicates at this data set, employees totaling up to about 2,400 folks in that particular category.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so with that, do we have other questions? No, I'll move forward.
Councilmember Fender, please.
Oh, sorry, I did not see you.
No, well, that's my fault. I just came up with it. For this column under sales, is that the amount of revenue for that business, or it's not, or is it? It's not the property value, is it?
Not the property value. It's that business's sales that was reported at that particular time.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, just need to jot down that note. All right, so question number 20. Between Martha and myself, we've added just a little bit more information here. It's more visual, just to help you understand or see. Oh, that was way too much. There it goes, a little bit better. Just to help you visualize, in comparison, one original budget to another, and comparing the revenues to expenditures in each of those years. Now, these are original budgets. These are not actuals. So this presents really an apples and apples comparison. And the major funding sources in each of those. So these would be our regular revenues, your transfers in or your other sources, and then your use of fund balance as compared to fiscal year 21's proposed and how much growth that is. So I think we spoke about in the budget message that the differential was, I think, about 5.7% growth from one year to the next. And then a visual showing you really how the base budget has been adjusted from one year to the next, and another visual of really those reoccurring expenses that are going to add to what the base budget is going to be for the next budget year in fiscal year 22. So in fiscal year 2021, you've got $32.5 million is what we started with. We're adding another 2.4 reoccurring expenses. So that means next year's starting point will be reset as a result. Just a visual for that.
And just a clarification on that, this is the original proposed budget comparison. It would change based on whatever council's preferred and adopted budget is, but this is based on what was proposed.
Yes, thank you. And just another little quick visual. Unfortunately, I put it later in the slide. Just a little infographic. This is another way to approach really how did you build this budget? If you were to start with fiscal year 20's original budget of $35.6 million, take away those prior year one-time items of 3.4, add in 1.1 million of base adjustments. Those are those adjustments that occurred with positions, market, and just inflationary factors that happen with a base budget. Then you add in your new reoccurring costs that we talked about, that 2.4, that will become part of your new base budget in the next year. And then you add in really what are those new one-time items that would be 3.2 for fiscal year 2021's proposed budget. And then we have this offset with less net transfers in and out. And that gets you really to your $38.2 million worth of budget. Another creative way of just looking at how did you build your budget. One is focusing on a base budget. One walks you from really what your original budget was in 2020 versus, how did you get to 2021 from there? Just different ways of looking at it. All right. So Martha has already covered item number 24. She talked about the new tax rate scenarios. I'm just calling out the attachment number 5 in the binder packet that was sent to you. Question number 30 talks about or asks about the current status of the Morrisville Carpenter Road project since NCDOT has a delay. how does that affect the conditional approval with the Thornberry project and the payment in lieu funds that were received for the road and sidewalk projects? Overall, I would say we received in streets payment in lieu from that project $109,000 towards improvements directly in the area of Morrisville Carpenter Road. It doesn't affect our usage, our future usage of those resources. So they're a part of that streets payment in lieu. When we need them for the project, we'll be able to shift them or appropriate them into that project as necessary.
And if I could just add, I have reached out to Joey Hopkins and hope to talk to him within the next couple of days just to try to get some more robust update on Morrisville Carpenter Road and our other NCDOT related projects.
Questions? Question number 32 is this one that I've sort of picked up, put down a couple of times. So I believe, Mayor, this is one of yours. I will get that information. It's just the scenarios and other things took priority at that point. They seemed important for council to get that. But information coming. Because I think I'm running out of questions between Martha and I having to answer that. So the question number 34, just a general high-level breakdown of what budget proposed items correlate to maybe some of our adopted master plans, some commitments or concepts that we've committed to in the past, and our transportation and mandates, actually. So I even include stormwater in this one. So just at a high level, at a glance, these are how I see these priorities maybe aligning directly or indirectly with these mandates, these concepts we've committed to, and these adopted plans. The CIP, of course, has its own correlation, and that's something in the final published document that I'll add those relationships back in. I used to have the CIP coded that way, so you could really see what projects lined up with the transportation plan or the adopted Parks and Rec plan.
And everything in all these budgets is aligned with our strategic plan.
Yes.
And noted in that way as well, which is great.
And I did mention that. I just thank you for reminding me. For question number 35, so here's the, I think, the item of most interest tonight, the question about sampling of commercial property and residential property values and what that impact might look like to a person's tax bill. So I'm not going to go over residential data because we did that the other night. But I have, based on your feedback from the other night, tweaked that commercial data and provided that back out to everybody. And let me walk through that really in a very similar way. I do want to point out one thing that I note in here. So I'm just going to read this. Reappraisals are meant to equitably distribute the tax burden, to right size really across all properties based on current market. So you've had a 4-year period where property values have really shifted and changed even over that 4-year period. Now, the disperse used to be pretty significant when it was an 8-year period. I've actually been a little surprised even in the 4-year period how much the market has also changed. But what that essentially does is the fair market values change between those revaluation years, and as the change in the property values, they really no longer reflect the actual fair value that a property is to pay in property taxes that support services. So that's that fair and equitable shift and redistribution and right sizing, if that makes sense, of that property's fair value of what they contribute in taxes that really equates to services for the community that they get for that money. There's the residential. My trackball is very slow. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so I tried to lay out this similar to the residential. Again, there's data behind each one of these categories. So let me just say out loud what these categories are because commercial seems to be important. I grouped the supermarkets together. I grouped the big box commercials together. Those would be things like the Target and the Walmart. The Walmart actually doesn't fit in small retail. It's really on the verge of a bigger box scenario, so I put it with the Target in terms of square footage. Apartments, grabbed a sampling of 5 apartments to provide an understanding there. Of course, hotel motels. Then I took a sampling of Class A office space. Morrisville's primed for some good Class A office space. We're also primed for office and flex warehouse space. And then we have a category of industrial bulk space. What is bulk space? It's just another way of saying a type of flex space. So there's a facility that's quite large. It's a distribution facility off of Aviation Parkway that's huge across from Southport. So that would be part of that scenario. And in the bulk spaces also the new gym. The gym, at some point I would imagine, it's a type of unusual piece of property. It will probably eventually get its own category from Wake County data at some point, but for now it's located, I believe, in this grouping. And then I've added to it, or actually extrapolated just for council, for your interest, is types of smaller businesses. So I tried to find across Morrisville what are small standalone businesses. So I would tell you that there is a preschool that used to be Goddard. That was one. I'm not sure what the name of it is at this particular time, but it's across the street in Morrisville Square. There is another veterinary facility that is a standalone facility. So those will be the things that I'm talking about there. Whether the owner of the business owns the property or not, I did not go that far, but just that it's a standalone, singular business. No banks are included in there because I felt that was corporate. And then small retail centers, those are really your strip centers. So I shifted Neomond actually from the small standalone business to the small retail center because Neomond Bakery actually owns the entire center. So it has smaller retail outlets within that whole strip center, in addition to Neomond Bakery, for example. And then there's another one up off of Lake Grove, for example, that's a part of that, just to give you some context, that has a veterinary facility, UPS, and I believe it's Pizza Hut. You know that really well, right? For the purposes of understanding what's that impact to small businesses, you can't really do the same thing you did with residential because most of the businesses probably don't own the property. Most of the properties are likely some type of investment and have realty companies that manage the lease agreements. So a way in which we can do this, and I've done this when I try to anticipate and project future tax base, is taking the impact of the tax rate changes and the delta to the tax bill and correlating that delta all the way back to price per square foot. Everybody following me? Okay, so that's why I have square footage here. And if you go all the way over here, let me reorient you again, I provide information for the bill and the value for 2015 because that's the last time there was a reval before this one. And I think there were significant changes in both groupings, residential and commercial. Show you the tax bill at our current rate and at the current value. I show you a tax bill at revenue neutral at the new value. And then I show you the proposed tax rate at 36.5 cents at the new value. And then I take it a step further and I find out what is the difference between the current tax rate for a tax bill and what a tax bill would be at revenue neutral for each of the properties. And then I break it down per square foot. So in the first example for supermarkets, you're probably talking about a 6-cent price per square foot increase above a revenue neutral rate from the current tax rate. Current tax rate, to the revenue neutral. Go over to the proposed tax rate. You're talking about 13 cents, and then so forth. So I roll down, and again, in some of the data, and it's not as obvious here, but in some of the data that's underneath here, the revenue neutral rate can potentially result in a lesser tax bill for some properties. Not as clear cut as with residential as it is with commercial, but there are some that are in the information, underlying information. Value drivers, it's pretty clear for Morrisville that your largest is your Class A and your apartment complexes. The tax assessor actually identified overall that apartments and hotel motels were drivers for overall. In Morrisville, for the sampling I've got, that's high, but it's not the highest in Morrisville. That's not to say that they're not one of the larger drivers. In this particular sampling, they're not as high as Class A, for example. But Morrisville has a lot of office facilities in the Carrington, Perimeter, and Paramount area. That's pretty good for our tax base. So some thoughts here in terms of how does that impact really small business owners. A thought to share here is, as I talk this through really with our GIS manager, lease terms do exist for probably a lot of small businesses that have a term or a period in which that lease rate exists. And more than likely in those terms and agreements, there's inflationary factors that are meant to offset probably some escalation in other cost, utilities, and whatnot, and potentially tax rate increases or changes. So we're not certain that the impact to everyone in a lease situation is immediate, unless they are renewing their lease, or unless their terms identify that there's an opportunity for that to occur. But that we are not as experts in that area. It's just something that we sort of observed and talked about today. Class A office space, much larger facilities. You're talking about 250,000 square feet and above in some cases. Those lease at much higher rates. I think that's worth saying out loud because they do have the largest growth at this particular point, as does apartments. Again, those are also fairly large in square footage. And again, I think what we're saying here is adjustments or changes in whether it's utilities, tax rates, other costs that are a part of lease agreements, it becomes a form of pass-on cost to a customer through the product, through the lease agreement when it's renewed, through other avenues. And I think that's something that the GIS manager and I wanted to just put out there on the table. When you're looking at commercial, the world is a little different than as compared to residential and how taxes may impact citizens. And I think I'll pause there to see if there's any questions.
Councilmember Rao, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first of all thank you so much for preparing all this information. The amount of work that you all have put into this is incredible. To me, this is very helpful because the one thing that concerns me when I look at it, though, is that when you look at maybe I'm reading the charts wrong, but I want to hone in on the impact of the tax rate on small business as we make this decision, because for me, it's important with them representing 55% of our revenue that whatever tax rate we agree upon has to take into account the economic circumstances we're in right now. So a lot of hotels, their occupancies are very low right now. Councilmember Garamella and I were at Triangle J last night. We heard from Michael Languth. I mean, the airport's just being devastated. We know sales tax are down, business is down. So under this chart, it does look that like the tax rate, if we went above revenue neutral to the proposed tax rate, that it is an increase in the financial, the bill, the tax bill at the end of the day. It may not be for everybody, but, you know, for me, I think that's just something that's been very helpful to look at how we make this decision. Now, revenue neutral is off the table for me just because it just doesn't do anything to advance our goals. And, you know, but I think this is important for us to consider in terms of the decisions that we make about this budget. The other point that I would make is that I appreciate Mayor Colley has brought up some good points in an email he sent in the last meeting about all the things that we can do, but I am concerned about a lot of this is based on forecasts. And so we're all sort of uncertain. You know, we can't predict. We want to think positively, but we don't know when hotel occupancies are going to come back. We don't know when people are going to be coming back to restaurants. If you look at our regional activity centers, which bring up a significant amount of revenue to Morrisville, those are like Park West and Grace Park. I'd be even curious. I've spoken to some of the guys at Casto that the revenues have taken a real hit. So I just want to throw that out there, that I think that we have to factor this into the equation in whatever tax rate that we arrive at, while at the same time ensuring that we're not completely cutting the quality of services that we provide. So the 3 cent and the 3.5 cent, I really like. I mean, living in heaven, if we didn't have this pandemic, I think a 4 cent would be ideal. I would vote for that without even blinking an eye. But that's my only hesitancy, is to look at that, you know. And I mean, I just wanted to give you my perspective. So.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, please, and then Councilmember Robati.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Jeannie, first of all, for going into such significant detail on all the commercial properties, because it is important to our town and it is important to the council. And obviously, there's a lot of different stakeholders, large property owners, small business owners, apartment complexes from the owner perspective, as well as the tenants. And I just wanted to point out that it is probably going to pass when the property tax or other costs are going up in an apartment situation. Usually those costs are transferred to the tenants in some way, and that cost of living goes up a little bit more, and the affordability does go down. So I'm very cognizant of making Morrisville just a little less affordable as we increase our tax base through the property tax adjustment. And so there is not at this time money that is dedicated towards the affordable housing initiative. There's things that we can do that don't directly impact cost for this budget cycle, but I would like to have the council consider affordability as they weigh in on this budget for this year, and then to think about how we can further improve affordability in the town as we go forward. We have options to consider, and we could pick one and then fund it when we feel it's appropriate. So affordability is a very important topic as it relates to apartments and to other naturally occurring affordable housing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Robati, please.
So I agree with my fellow council members about the need to consider small businesses in our budget discussions. And for that reason, I think it's a 3.5 cents where we have the $1.3 million of fund balance to offset 1 or 2 cents of tax rate increase. I think that's a good use of going a little bit over the fund balance number that we would usually use, or far exceeding the fund balance that we would usually use. I think that at that rate, I think that gives us a compelling budget story, Transportation is fully funded. We have $200,000 to CIP Capital Reserve. We get senior citizen programming, cultural programming, a full staff position, and project funding and smart city funding on our sustainability initiatives. And we increase revenues in park Wi-Fi with the park Wi-Fi, and then we also have, and we have other avenues with which we can make progress on the dog park. I think that that's a very compelling budget story, and I think that using the fund balance to offset the need for further increases, I think is the balance that we strike there. And that's what I had to say.
Okay. Thank you. Did anyone have any other questions about the commercial that Jeannie was presenting or anything like that? Okay. Is there any more?
Okay.
Continue.
Just one little minor note also, just between commercial and residential, often there's conversation about type of service that we provide. Each can be a little different. Commercial is something you have to think about. How do you protect facilities of the magnitude that we have, apartment complexes, for example. Types of structures derive the type of equipment that we have to purchase to be able to fight fires effectively and provide. It's just an example to throw out there. The type of commercial base you have can influence and affect the type of budget ask that you have and can create some increases in cost as a result. You need a certain type of ladder truck to be able to get to 5 stories if your UDO allows you to build facilities of that nature, or if you allow stick-built apartments or senior centers, for example. So the type of commercial, the type of zoning, the type of building allowed in Morrisville has impact to your budget, just as the type of residents and how close they are together, the buildings, residential structures, influences the type and effectiveness and road connectivity of getting there to the people as quickly as possible. Just an example, just something to share. I hear a fire chief in my head. So I'm going to...
Councilmember Fender has a question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a comment regarding the commercial properties, and I appreciate you pulling this together. I am cognizant of the hit that our businesses have taken over the past 2 months, especially the hotels and the restaurants in Morrisville. That being said, I think Morrisville is in a very unique position in that, our town is not going to move further away from the airport. Our town is still right by the airport. Our town is still right beside Research Triangle Park. So those things haven't changed. And we can, even though we're having a hit now, our town is very fortunate and blessed that we're poised to take advantage of when the economy does come back. And businesses are still going to want to relocate here. Another comment?
Thank you for sharing. Comment from Councilmember Garamello, please.
Yeah, actually piggybacking on what Donna is trying to say, yesterday Michael Langdon's presentation was just eye-opener because there's I think once we get the slides, I can send it to you all. The one slide that I really took a hit was their traffic is less than 93% from last year. So they already project that the airport will take 5 to 6 years before they can come back to 80% of what they were before March, and the same thing goes with the occupancy rate. He'd had one more survey to look at the confidence level, but done by data analytics team out of San Jose, and they said like close to 40% of still the U.S. is not ready to travel or stay. So this is going to take a long time. It's not about the tax increase or here or not, but the overall recovery and the occupancy rates of the hotels is going to be a big impact. And other thing is we have not considered this, and that which is surely coming is many of the Morrisville residents are the white collar jobs, the high income paying jobs, and those companies are just waiting for a quarter or next quarter. There'll be a lot of jobs which will be cut. IBM already announced thousands of jobs which is going. Cisco is announcing some, and then AT&T is announcing. There are a lot of companies who are not able to make for the next 2-3 quarters. There will be a lot of cuts. So I want the council to think about all these factors. It's not just the rent is going only, $30, but if the person is not able to pay, even $5 is a lot of money for them. That's all.
Okay. Ms. Oaks, continue, please.
Okay, so at this time, did you have anything you wanted to add before I go further? Okay. So at this time, I'm going to go over really what I call your action items. These would be the items if you focused in on a particular scenario, if you were able to even do that tonight, it would certainly allow staff to be able to adjust and adapt what are your actionable items in preparation for adoption. You are shifting around some revenue sources, you are shifting around and exchanging some expenditures, so there is some back-end work that has to happen to roll it up to this level. So just explaining the logistics behind that. I'll just go over some of the general information that's typically covered in a budget ordinance. Remember, this is the appropriation level of authority that you're giving a town manager to operate within to deliver the core services and new initiatives that you are agreeing to or directing are important. This is the policy. So typically we break it down from revenues and we show major expenditures. Some other funds that I've talked about that are non-operating funds are also, we have designated through the ordinance as levels of appropriation. We've talked about the Municipal Service District Fund, for example. That's to convert private streets to public standards and take over that maintenance. And there's one more neighborhood that we need to accumulate funds and reserves to be able to pay for what is probably a little more than $1 million worth of project cost at some point in the future. Another thing that we are establishing with this budget is a debt service fund. So we are making allocations from the general fund to this debt service fund. It's strictly logistics. It calls it out separate from the general fund, allows you to accumulate retired costs that you normally gets reabsorbed by operational expenses in a general fund. So we want to retain those and hold that baseline so we can accumulate those retired funds and redirect them to new debt in the future. And pulling it out separate just allows us to more effectively do that, and it's more transparent, actually. So the other important item is really the levy of taxes and fees, general fees. So this is calling out what are you establishing as council or elected body, the tax rates. So in this case, you have two that you're setting. You have your general fund tax rate of, at this point, it was 36.5 cents per $100 assessed value. And then you have your municipal service district tax that is specifically for those neighborhoods that were are petitioned to be a part of that district. That's 10 cents. And here's the municipal service district. You also authorize a user fee schedule that is a part of what was presented in your budget report. Some minor, moderate changes. You authorize the town manager to have a certain level of full-time equivalent employees. So you authorize full-time positions and some level of part-time. Then you also authorize really for the town manager what type of structure of pay and merits. Then we have our typical boilerplates. You set your purchase order threshold levels each year. This is just policy. We certainly want to retain our legal attorney on retainer over there, so we have his fees built into this. That's the most important part, right, Frank? Then we have some special authorities that you grant a town manager. These are the unique things to any municipality where you give the town manager the ability to use lap salary, for example. You just require the manager to come back and report how she's effectively utilizing any available lap salary in a year. That's unique. We have also boilerplate items that relate to how you give her authority in advance to handle and manage contracts for you, because contracts are directly related to the items that you're appropriating and directing her to have her staff execute for you throughout the year. So it's important she has that latitude and flexibility to maneuver and act quickly and not have to come back to council each and every time. And the budget ordinance allows her to do that. And then other general special appropriations. This year we do have one that's related to a previously approved action of council, that if there are any remaining funds in 2020 that were allocated for the senior center and upfitting or getting that secured, that we would be able to reappropriate without having to come back to council those monies for the same intended purpose to get that facility online. So that is at fiscal year end 20, if there's anything left that was for that intended purpose, she would be able to redirect those back to fiscal year 21 for the same intended purpose. And then, of course, other general authorities that are typically outlined, I would call boilerplate. And one in particular that I'll just say is worth mentioning, it is a boilerplate item, but at fiscal year end, if there are any outstanding purchase orders that have encumbered funds, but we haven't received invoices for, those are called outstanding encumbered dollars. The manager has the authority to actually reappropriate those dollars. They're not spent yet, but they've been held through a purchase order. So they have a commitment and an obligation. We need to carry those unused purchase order dollars and move them over to the next fiscal year. So they continue to be available for those projects they probably relate to. So we call that a purchase order rollover. Always very important to have this particular action item to give your tax assessors in Wake County primarily, and in Durham a little bit, the authority to levy taxes for you, collect those taxes, and to also bill for stormwater fee through those property bills, and collect that and distribute that back to us on a routine basis. And then, of course, the last one is a resolution of your intent to establish a debt service fund. I believe that is it. Those are your action items. Primarily, the one that's going to be adjusted is going to be your budget ordinance, with aligning with whatever budget scenario that council is interested in. Okay. So at this point, I think I'm going to hand Councilmember or Town Manager Page, did you have anything you wanted to add before we kick it over to council? Okay. Mayor?
Okay. Great. So you've heard from staff. I'd suggest maybe taking a 10-minute break, and then we'll start our discussion because it's going to take a while. So is that okay with everybody? We'll take a 10-minute break, come back at 7:30. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's do that. Okay, it's 7:30, and we're coming back into session, and there was some discussion about TJ Cog in that meeting, and you guys have been really good in the past about sending out the after actions, so we really appreciate that.
No, it's okay.
It's good to share all the information we can.
Well,
So,
I would have liked to have known about it before it happened, rather than after the fact.
yes. So now we're at the point to start discussing as a group where we want to land on this year's budget. So I'm happy that our staff, sorry, this is not working, has been able to adjust to what they have heard and created this, their third preferred proposed budget, labeled Scenario R. It aligns well with our adopted strategic plan and demonstrates the flexibility to confidently continue our operations if the current crisis worsens or improves. This preferred alternative meets our one-year needs and reflects the values and priorities staff has heard from this council. I especially appreciate the traffic study safety officer to spearhead the initiation of the traffic safety unit. An officer visiting our schools may lead to future police officers, a win-win for sure. To do any less than scenario R in the included programming would, I believe, burden our future years already problematic unnecessarily and prevent our ability to be part of the recovery, but instead cause the recovery of our own town and region to lag behind. Scenario R is a great place to address operations for fiscal year 21 and begin discussions about how to meet our out-year needs. So I believe we had some virtual members who want to make some comments at this time. Councilmember Garamella and then Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
So I wanted to pick up on what I started with. For me, I was looking at two options, either option O or option P, modified to put more money into the transportation bucket. And also, hopefully, if we can club that with sidewalk projects, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. When I consider all of the scenarios that have been shared this evening, I'm inspired that they all have those elements that we requested. The burden on the commercial side of our business and the affordability of residential living for apartments really weigh on me. And I'm thinking O or P would be the best choice. I want to make sure, though, that we really focus on the value that we are presenting to the town, because we're doing some back office things that people don't see, but they are going to potentially have a 10% or more property tax increase, and they need to have an understanding of what value that they are receiving for that. And they are receiving future investment in our roads and transportation. They are receiving, cultural programs. They are receiving advancement on some of our long-term projects. So it's very important that we share the story. We're not going significantly higher necessarily, but there's still value in where we are. We are going to be exercising the opportunity to propose a bond in 2021, which again will have potential cost increases as far as property tax, but that would be voter approved and they would have a voice. This year we did not have a focus group, so we have to take our responsibility to act on behalf of the stakeholders in Morrisville and do what's right. If in a near term we find that we're in a better situation, we can activate projects that are on what I call the waiting list and do even more good for the town. So I would like to see like option P with a full half-cent investment in roads and transportation, making it like option P in a way with the same amount of money, because I think roads are going to be a very important issue to our town due to the NCDOT financial issues. Right now, we have Morrisville Carpenter Road on hold, and we may need to invest more town money in order to get that moving forward in the near term. And this might not be a situation they can get out of easily, as the gas tax is tied to their revenue streams. And as we know, the last couple months, we haven't been driving around a lot. So they're going to take a double hit, not only from the fact that they are having 2019 budget issues, but they're having current budget issues as well. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, I was trying to follow. You think letter P plus added?
I said
roadway?
O. I like O. I like
Okay.
O, but I'd like half a cent to be for roads and transportation in addition to that. So that equals the same amount as P.
Okay, so in addition to the 600 that's in all
In
the
the
scenarios,
rate.
another 3.
I like O, but I would like possibly, if we're going to raise the tax rate to the level of P, I would like all of that to be in roads and transportation.
Okay, I think I understand this.
So I don't
have
really
that
like.
too? So 900 to roadways instead of 600? Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's been captured. Thank you very much for clarifying. I'm sorry I didn't get that right away.
I know it was confusing because I was trying to use letters to help people, but it failed. So it's O plus 300,000. Thank you.
Assistant Manager Zudema, did you hold something up? Was there someone else virtually?
No, sir.
No. Okay, I apologize. Councilmember Rao, please.
You go first.
Well, okay, so I'm trying real quickly to understand the difference between O and P and trying to figure out if we can accommodate what you all have just proposed. And I'm sorry,
Would you like me to?
yes, could you, Martha, I'm looking quickly, but you probably have it at the tip.
The difference between O and P is the half-year implementation for Senior Recreation Program Specialist. O is a half-year implementation. The same is the case for our Athletic Facilities Maintenance Technician. Rather than a full-year implementation, it is a half-year implementation. And O currently has no CIP capital reserve.
Okay.
Whereas P already has $200,000. So if speaking for what Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson said, add, I'll say $300,000, which is a half a cent tax increment, but she wants it all allocated to roadway and transportation reserve, which would increase that to $900,000 with no other changes to O. May I confirm that, Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson?
Yes, because I really think that roads are one of our most important priorities for this next year.
And I concur with that.
Thank you.
And so if I could just, based on what Councilmember Garamella was saying, he's removing the CIP and putting it into roadway from P, which would put it at $800,000. So an additional $100,000 would need to be found to accomplish that goal. One of the ways to do it would be, as Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson suggested, or some other trade-off of $100,000 of expenditures somewhere in that budget. If you asked me what I would do, have you asked me that?
I will ask you that.
No, we don't ask you. You already you went from A to Z of options already, so you don't have any left.
I would continue to advocate to, I know it's additional recurring expense, I recognize that, but we need those two positions more than a public works vehicle and a bus that are still functional. So I would remove the deferred vehicle replacements and add to the roadway transportation reserve, if that was an acceptable substitute consideration.
So that's like a between an O and a P option.
It's a swap. It's a swap. It's a P model with some swaps.
A P, okay.
Same
okay.
tax rate between the two.
Got it.
So what two positions are you saying we need?
The two that are half-year implementation in scenario O are the Senior Recreation Program Specialist and the Athletic Facilities Maintenance Technician. They are fully funded in scenario P.
And we've gone back and forth on that too, whether Okay, so I can, so I can live with that option. So first, let me say, I really appreciate the conversation that we've had over the last several meetings as it relates to the budget. That was really important to me. And it was really important for me to hear what specifically was important to each one of you. And I will tell you, when we first started this conversation, we were on opposite ends, I would say. There were people that wanted to go revenue neutral, and there were folks like yourself that wanted to go above the proposed tax rates. So I really...
I would not say that.
Okay, well, you kept saying you wanted to add, so that how else are you going to... Okay, I'll take that back. But you did talk about adding more things.
To the proposed budget.
Right, to the proposed budget, which would take us over a 4-cent tax increase. I mean, how else are you going to pay for those items if you want to put them in there?
Okay.
Okay, so that's fine. So my point being is that we were, some of us were on very opposite ends, and we have come here into the middle, and I really appreciate that. I think that's what a council should do, and I think this is where we kind of give and take, and we find common ground and consensus. So I can live with the P changes, the P option with some changes, because a lot of what I really did care about is associated with that option. The one-time expenses have been reduced, and I'm sorry, the reoccurring expenses have been reduced, and there were more one-time expenses, which was really important to me. And we are taking care of our current staff. I like that that's in there. I like that there's an option for, oh, now I forgot, for the, oh my gosh, the succession planning. Thank you. Martha found a way to make that actually happen. That was important to me. So not everything that's important to me is here. I wish that this option had a police officer and that traffic, the beginnings of that traffic unit. I wish that somehow that was in there. But you know, we can't, again, can't do it all. I can't spend unlimitedly at home, and I think we need to have a really balanced approach, and I appreciate that. This is, I think, a balanced approach. That's all I have now.
Thank you. Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so the way I look at it, I mean, for me, just the circumstances we're in makes me look at the budget differently than we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, because I really believe that we're in a storm, and it's like we're flying a plane, and we talked about the airport today, we're at a major pocket of turbulence, and we don't know when we're going to stabilize back to a comfortable cruise like where everything is great. And so if we weren't in the situation we're in, I'd been fine with the 4 cents above revenue neutral, but I think that based on everything that I've seen, I want to make sure that we're making a balanced decision on what's the budget we can agree on that's investing in sustainability, smart cities, cybersecurity, continues the core body of work. And I do like the points that Councilmember Garamella, Scroggins-Johnson, and I think Councilmember Johnson also, all of us, we've all said that we really agree that transportation is something really critical for the town. And I think that the DOT, for the public listening tonight, it's the worst it's ever been, probably in 100 years, with the DOT 20 million below the legally required limit, 300 million shortfall from this year. And so I just think it's so critical that we have a reoccurring revenue base for our transportation. So, you know, I'm looking at it saying we've got to give a little bit of a break to these apartments, these business activity centers, especially after the recovery. We're going to still be looking at town center this year, but apartments and multifamily is an important part of that, along with restaurants and all of those things. So I think that, you know, I would feel more comfortable on a budget that takes in all of that, rather than just saying, well, things may get better. They may get a lot better than we think, sooner than we think, which is what I'm hoping. And then at that time, I think we can look at investing even more in the town and catch up. And I know we're going to lose out on investing in some of the things that we could do, but, so I think P is good. I think maybe the O plus the 5 cent for the
Not 5 cents.
transportation.
A penny, half a penny.
Half a penny, that's what I meant, for transportation. So that would, I think that would be something that I think would continue our work, and we can revisit this, later in the year I know we set the tax rate and it's a reoccurring revenue, but we can always come back 6 months later and things are better and say we could shift money around. But I just think that for me, it's like it's just the uncertainty. And I think that we've got to be very diligent as stewards of the taxpayer money, that we're also looking at the impact on our 55% of commercial revenue, because I want them to come back roaring strong. And we're the envy of any city in the county or state to have 55% of our growth being funded by commercial. That's my final thoughts. I just think, but I want to thank the staff for working so hard on this. And I know it's not been easy, and I want to thank my colleagues too. We're not going to agree on everything, but I think in this process, there's a lot that we have agreed upon in this budget process, probably more than others, actually. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Fender and then Councilmember Rabati, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So I am going to contribute my 2 cents worth here. I am very partial to scenario Q, which is similar to the P and O. However, the one thing I like about Q is that it does include the traffic safety officer for a half year, and that's that one police officer to start spearheading the traffic program initiative. And I like that, and then I think it's especially more important now to get that police unit started, especially with Morrisville Carpenter Road widening project being delayed and other road construction projects being delayed, is that we are still going to be dealing with a lot of congestion until those projects get moving forward and complete. So I think that's very important that we keep that in there. And I'm very happy to see that all these scenarios are still contributing this, are contributing the $600,000 toward the roadway and transportation fund, because as Councilmember Garamella and Scroggins-Johnson and Rao and Johnson have all said, is that the transportation is extremely, extremely important to us in Morrisville. And I even would be agreeable to, similar to what Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson was saying, is, get rid of this, under the scenario Q, get rid of the capital reserve allocation and have that contribute an additional $100K to the roadway and transportation fund. Other than that, the only thing that still concerns me is I would like to put back in the $50,000 for the sustainability initiative and have that funded at the $100,000 level. Although I'm extremely grateful that that is showing up as a line item in this year's budget. The $50,000 would only cover one solar panel installation And I would like to see what other initiatives we could implement in the next year under sustainability. So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Rabati.
Yeah. So I wonder, Councilmember Fender, if you would consider option P without the new vehicles and with the things that you like in option Q. So that's one thing. And I believe that might be it for now.
Should I respond to that?
Sure, feel free.
Thank you. I would be agreeable to that, Councilmember Robati, for going the vehicle replacement and putting in the half year of the traffic safety officer.
Okay, so I think everyone's had a chance to speak. I guess I'm a little concerned that we feel the need to trade things off. We're talking about things that we all feel are important. I'm not sure how we need to jam them into a property tax rate rather than funding them and letting the property tax be based on our needs and our values rather than trying to work it the other way. And I fear that we might not be hearing the message from our staff about the consequences of delaying and deferring the needed items. Town manager is doing all she can to try to meet our needs, to try to meet a property tax rate that we're aiming for. But by delaying and deferring things, it's going to make it harder for us to do things in future years as well. So I'm a little concerned about that. I don't want us to fall significantly behind and avoid making future year decisions even more difficult. I don't think it's just about the items in this budget. It's about our future capacity to continue the work we have begun and that the residents expect us to continue progress on, items which many of us have spoken in support of. I think now is the time for our words to be matched with tangible action so that we can have tangible results. Now, I know we can't go back and change decisions already made, but we can imagine where we would be if past leaders had the foresight to provide even a single penny of additional revenue capacity a few years ago. There would have been funds to do the full renovation of the MAFC and not spend so much time value engineering the project that it might be complete right now. There might have been funds available for adding 2,000 square feet of Morrisville municipal meeting space within the Wake County Library. The dog park might already have been a reality, as was mentioned by a couple other people. Even a small change can have significant positive benefits into the future. So this council right here has two budgets to work with, FY21 and FY22 next year. And I hope that we can keep an open mind and are able to challenge the process. That's one of the strategies for leadership from the UNC School of Government, and break the habit of looking only at what is right in front of us right now at this moment, and instead taking the higher view, thinking long-term, and building the capacity to meet the growing expectations and needs of our increasingly sophisticated population. I fear that we may be misreading our residents' willingness to support progress. Past councils appear to have assumed residents wished leaders would do what they could with a fixed property tax rate. This approach has resulted in our current situation. It's a long list of needs and delayed projects and programs and a roadway network which is not meeting our needs. And that's also our biggest source of input from stakeholders. So I'm very heartened to hear everyone, all 7 of us, are very supportive of the roadway and transportation. That's an important thing to keep moving. Additionally, our 2018 Parks and Rec Master Plan has identified 124 acres as our shortfall to meet the parks and open space need of our population. So that could be partially addressed by the CIP Reserve Fund. Those things could be used for that. If we hope to address these and other deficiencies, it will take leadership and political will to help our residents understand that our property tax rate is simply inadequate to even begin to address these huge issues in a meaningful way, especially with NCDOT's reduced ability to partner with us financially. So if we're looking to do 54 anytime, this doesn't really bring us any further. It addresses some smaller things. So our residents are intelligent people who can understand that you get what you pay for. Our staff has made it very clear from their professional perspective how further delaying staff and operational needs this year will only exacerbate the ability and difficult decision-making for future years. These needs will not go away if we ignore them this year. Okay, I understand that a paradigm shift of this magnitude, especially one 30 years in the making, is challenging, but I see this as an opportunity for us as a group to align our words with our actions with full recognition and empathy and compassion for the financial challenges that our residents and businesses are facing. Some businesses may not exist post-vaccine, and some residents may have to make tough choices in order to meet their obligations. But as noted in the CERT motto, we can still do the greatest good for the greatest number. Our residents have chosen us to make decisions on their behalf, and when given a choice in the most recent 2 elections, they chose candidates who spoke not about a particular tax rate, but about hearing their comment, concerns, and committing to meeting the stated needs of the residents to make progress towards a better quality of life for Morrisville, including roadways, mobility, sustainability, affordable housing, sidewalks, parks, and a vibrant town center, all of which have been mentioned. So if they're so important, we should really devote some commitment and funding into the future as well. With so much discussion about flattening the curve, I think it is appropriate to note that the flatter we make the curve now, that is, the closer to revenue neutral, the steeper the curve will need to be in the future to keep the lights on and make the progress the residents have made clear they expect to address us in a timely manner. Let's make this budget discussion about what we are going to invest in, rather than seeking to reduce staff, programs, and services to achieve some arbitrary number of cents above the revenue neutral or below current property tax rate. So that was a lot, but I felt I needed to share that because I think this budget and next year is an opportunity to change the trajectory of the town. So I think that's important, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts if they would like to share any at this point. Otherwise, I think we should hear back from staff about what they heard and where they feel that we've all settled on everything. And once again, I would like to say that I think adding the traffic program is really important for our future, and I think for a number of different reasons. Councilmember Fender.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to your comments. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you are saying, and that we need to continue investing in Morrisville for our future, and especially since the past 28 years, council has remained pretty close to revenue neutral all this time. However, with the current situation, I cannot see doing that. I wish it was a different situation that we were in right now. I think that the town I think this budget, even with where we're headed, it still provides a lot of investment for our town and in amenities that our residents want, without overly burdening the residents in the business community. And I think our town is poised to bounce back fairly quickly to this economic situation. And we just got to keep doing what we're doing and investing in the town.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Any other comments at this time? Anyone virtually want to chime in?
So, yeah, I do. I just want to make a comment.
Mayor
I
Pro
think it's incredibly important to acknowledge the hard work that has been done by our council members who put a lot of thought into this budget. And it's important to acknowledge the hard work of our staff who are constantly reacting to our different needs, or I shouldn't say our needs, they're not our, they're town needs, but how our staff was able to react to the concerns of each one of the council members here. That needs to be repeated often, and it needs to be acknowledged that this was not an easy task. No budget year is ever easy because there are difficult choices that need to be made every year in a budget. Every year there are millions of dollars of unfunded projects. This year alone, there's an additional $3 million worth of projects in the proposed budget. If we were to fund those $3 million worth of projects, that would be an additional 5 cents above the proposed 4-cent tax increase. That would have been a 9-cent tax increase to our residents. There are always going to be items that we cannot fund in any one budget year. There are always going to be priorities that have to be made with the thought in mind of what the public can financially support and be able to live with. And I will tell you that this budget, the term small change, this budget is not a small change. This is a significant change to what we are doing in this budget, the items that we are adding, and the tax rate that we've come to consensus on, I think, here. That is not insignificant, and it did not come without great thought, and it did not come without great balance that each one of us weighed heavily. So once again, I'm going to say we need to acknowledge the situation that we're in today, the economic situation that we're in, that hopefully will go by quickly because it is a health situation or a health problem, a health pandemic that has created the economic situation that we're in. And I am praying that this passes quickly and that we do bounce back. And I believe that that will happen. I just don't know when that will be. But again, I want to acknowledge the hard work that every one of these council members put in to the decision that they are making. Well, we're not voting on this until the end of June, but and the challenges that each one of us was faced with.
Thank you. We're going to hear from Councilmember Garamella, then Councilmember Rao, then Councilmember Rabadi, please.
Yeah, I think, Liz, you put it exactly the way I was thinking too, is we all need to understand that we are close to $2.4 million in the hole that we are trying to recover. That's a revenue loss that we didn't get. But still, over and beyond, I remember my first conversation with Liz, and I said, no, I would not go up, a penny more than the revenue neutral. And when Martha, gave us the levels of how it is and, the situation we are in, I was had to make a hard decision because I agree with the small businesses, and I like what Vicky said about affordable housing. Just look at 0.34 per square feet, and it equates almost like $300 or $400 more for the owner of the apartment. When he has to pay $100,000 more, he will trickle it down. And we are talking about creating affordability. We can be sure by doing this, even the 3.5, they're going to have a $50 or $60 more in their rent next year, because it will obviously be straight implication of trickling, and the same is with the small business owners and other things. So I too agree, I think the staff has worked really, really hard, and we have thrown so many options, and they gave back us so many options. We just can't do everything. I wish this, we all remember sitting on the town retreat in February. We were flying, this all I bet you we have achieved with even 4 cents, revenue neutral with all these projects, because we would have all the capacity to do it. And unfortunately, we do not. And I don't think just thinking that we have to do these projects and put a burden on our people is the right way. We have to see how the economy comes back, and organically everything will grow back. So we have to, work with the winds, and going against the winds is not best advisable. So I would say that. Thank you.
Councilmember Rao, then Councilmember Rabadi.
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, I think that we should all commend ourselves for working so hard on this budget, like Mayor Pro Tem Johnson said, because it's wartime right now. I mean, you know, when you take a step back and you look at the numbers, 100,000 Americans have died. We have over 40 million unemployed, 1.5 million in North Carolina. People are going to be doing layoffs. There's going to be furloughs. I just think that we have to commend ourselves that even in a period of war on our healthcare system, on the economy, that we're still able to make investments for the future. So what makes me feel uncomfortable is that, you know, it's not like we're not investing. If we weren't in a period of war like we are now, then I think that, you know, above revenue neutral, the whole amount would be fine. I think that this budget does make those core investments, and we're also all agreeing on the importance of transportation. I think a year from now, hopefully we'll be in a very different situation, maybe even hopefully sooner than that. And then when we are, we can really look at reinvesting or how we get caught up. The final thought I would say is that there could never be a return back to the normal that we once had. Don't mean to be a pessimist, but we today attended the League of Municipalities, and we heard from Paul Meyer and Rose Vaughn Williams about the impacts on cities and what this is going to do to our businesses. And you know, even though they're getting federal money, we heard from Michael Lengood last night about the airport losing $150 million. It could be 3 to 4 years before tourism is back, before hotels are fully occupied. So I just think that those are the kinds of perspectives that we have to share with our citizens when we're arriving at these kinds of decisions. And but I do want to commend everyone here and the staff for, I think, coming a long way to build consensus. And no one's going to get everything they ever want out of a budget, but the fact is that we can all get behind a budget that we believe will continue to invest during a period of war. I think that's a real success, and kudos to the council and the staff. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Rabati, please.
I just wanted to say that just because something doesn't make it into this budget, or just because something is deferred 6 months in this budget, it doesn't mean that we're not going to get it, and it doesn't mean that we're going to stop fighting for it. I just think that right now we need to be in a place where there's a balance between moving forward, which I know we all are committed to, and not placing an undue burden on people in a situation where we don't even know the extent of what we might be doing. So I think that, you know, I do think we're coalescing kind of around a budget that strikes that balance. And, you know, next year I hope that we do a bond together. I hope that we can fund tons of projects. And, you know, I think that we'll leave the budget process and we'll go on to, with the help of staff, do a lot of projects that don't necessarily have to be funded in the budget. So I think that, you know, I think it's important to remember that we're not defining the scope of the impact that we're going to have by agreeing on a budget. The only thing that defines the scope of the impact that we can have is our imagination. So that is what I wanted to say.
I do like that. The only limit is our imagination. Well, we've been doing a really good job. That's why all our property values have gone up so much, and that's why this reval year has been so good for businesses and for people. Mayor Pro Tem?
I actually have 2 questions for Martha. Can you tell us, Martha, usually every year in the fall after we get our CAFR report, we go ahead and we fund, or we can potentially fund new projects. Is that a good place to maybe revisit and look at sustainability projects and whether there is the ability to put additional funding toward that effort?
Yes, as we've talked about some of the implementation triggers, regularly council gets the results of our actual financial report for this year. It would be for fiscal year 20 that ends June 30. It usually takes 90-ish days before you receive that actual real revenues and real expenditures reconciliation, and that's why you've heard us say before, that's really the one time of the year that your fund balance is a real number. We're projecting and forecasting all the other times, but at June 30, that's a real number. And that's where we calculate what percentage we have as compared to our real expenditures, and you get that percentage that falls somewhere in our policy boundaries, which are currently 25 to 45%. So council receives that report immediately following the audit of the financial reports. That is one of the specific places that we've mentioned as a trigger that council could then choose to activate usage of that fund balance in any number of ways. One could be to fund additional projects. One could be to set more money aside in reserves, which you did significantly 2 years ago, where we put the $3.5 million into reserves. We took that excess balance and put it in. Council, and we've talked to council about this before, not recently, you could set up an automatic trigger that any excess over some percentage automatically goes to one of your reserve funds. We haven't chosen to do that. We've gone with a fixed amount, but that could be something that council could consider. You still have lots of policy discussions you want to have that you may also want to further explore before you know what those numbers are. But we are suggesting that's a more specific trigger that you could use for some things that you've talked about that just may not make it this time. We're very purposeful at showing some of those deferred requests and some of the things that you've talked about, and you know what's on your list of priorities that you want to consider. Then what we've also talked about as enhancement is just much closer monitoring. We do it at a high level basis, but we could enhance that and look at that more regularly and report, which we typically don't do to council. When we get a sales tax projection, tell you where it's falling. It will give you some headwinds of that. That's not the only revenue source, but it is the most significant revenue source for us that we think is going to be impacted. And then when we typically show you our mid-year forecast, that would be, usually that's another place where you receive a report and we launch the next year's budget process, but there could be physical steps or actions or appropriations that council could take at that time as well.
So getting to Councilmember Fender's concern about having the full appropriation for the sustainability programming, the program coordinator, the sustainability program coordinator would be in this budget. They would be hired, well, you would maybe start looking soon. Budget year starts July 1. So they wouldn't even be able to spend the money that we have programmed in here for sustainability before probably CAFR comes out and we have that discussion. So I guess what I'm saying is there's potential to add to that in the fall, even before we've spent the money that we're already programming. I mean, is that fair to say?
It is.
Okay, and then my other question too is, because I do have a little heartburn over the police officer, the traffic, the traffic officer. We have hired mid-year before in past budgets. We have in the middle of a budget year decided that we wanted a new employee for, and I couldn't tell you right now what position it was or when or whatever, but
it was
I know we've done
it. It's been one time in the 6 years I've been here, and I believe it was 2 years ago when we added a planner for workload.
Okay, okay. So that is also a potential. This position is a half year anyhow that we have programmed in here as an option. We could also look at that mid-year, see where we are, and we could. And I'm assuming, and I'm making a big assumption, but I'm assuming most of us or majority of us would want to do that. But that's a potential. Maybe that's what I should say. That's a potential as well. That was a question. Sorry.
That is correct.
Okay.
I will cautiously also say this. I believe staff has demonstrated a good ability to take the comments and translate it into a budget. And as you've seen tonight, we introduced some other creative strategies. If council focuses on, yes, try to get this in, yes, try to get this in, staff can do that.
Okay.
I guarantee you, between the town manager and myself, we've already written down 2 or 3 different kinds of scenarios that we could based on your input.
Okay, perfect.
It sounds like
And
we're
I
not going
think-
to have something exact just yet. Yeah, we're going
think
to
we have
Satish next.
Satish.
So it sounds like we're going to hear something back again next Thursday. He had to go, or?
He wants to share with you that he would like to be excused.
Councilmember Garamella.
Yeah, I got a work commitment that already started at 8 o'clock, so 8:15 is the max that I could stay, so I request I be excused.
Would you like to make a motion to be excused?
Do we need to be that formal? We're not taking action, but I'm fine doing it either way.
There's no more votes. There's no voting tonight.
Just vote to adjourn.
The work session.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you for
you,
your
guys.
participation and your input. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
I think we're almost done anyhow.
Were you set?
I'm sorry?
Were you set? Did you have other thoughts?
No, that was it. I got my questions asked and answered. Thank you.
I had a couple of things. I also agree with the sustainability, the funding right away. I think that's going to be important for planning. I want to take the temperature of the council. Number 18 in the FAQ is about an economic development staffer. I think staff came back with a really good answer in that we need to sort of understand what that would be. I think just like we're doing for our fire station, a design build, learn as we go is something that's important. A good person to have had economic development staff would have been 2 months ago. The second best time is right now, because as we enter the recovery, if we all move forward and we don't have another wave, the recovery has started. We are on the right track. So we need to be able to help our businesses that make it through to get through, and those that want to recover to come further. So would anyone be interested in staff seeing if they could put the $100,000 plus $12,000 for onboarding for an economic development staffer as soon as possible to help our business community? Comment from Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
I do feel that economic development is a very big part of our success in Morrisville. The Chamber has been tasked with providing the economic development function for the town through a contract that we sign every year. Our annual membership for the Chamber is around 40,000 plus or minus, depending on year in, year out. And we currently do not have a chamber president. Sarah Gaskell stepped down in March. And so we don't know what the skill set of the future chamber president will be. I feel like $40,000 is a great investment to receive the benefit of the economic development function. And the chamber has produced significant amount of jobs for our town in the past. So we would certainly not be, in a gap if they continue to serve that function with a person that has that skill set. It's just we don't know. And to try to we're solving for a problem when it's just, a temporary situation. We actually should have given the chamber our input as to the fact that we do want economic development in the background of that chamber president. If they don't have it, then we certainly do need to have a conversation at the council level about where we want that support to come from. But just because we have a temporary absence, I think it's a little early to try to solve for something. We don't know if we even have a problem. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Councilmember Rao.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this position up. I actually initially had, I've always been supportive of this kind of a position, but my thought is that I think that as I've been looking at the business community and talking to business folks out there, I think the problem at hand is getting the dollars and resources into the businesses who aren't getting their PPP protection or their emergency disaster relief. The other problem they're having is their employees are having a much harder time getting unemployment insurance. So I think there's been a little bit of an uncertain time right now because of the lack of leadership at the chamber. If we were going to do something, I wish we'd had more money to just put in like a Raleigh or an Apex, but you got to put in about $1 million if you're going to have businesses get at least 20 or 30,000, and we can't do that. The other one would be an angel fund program like what Fuquay and Holly Springs did, which could be something that we could work with the chamber on in terms of having an angel fund that people could apply for, and then they would get grants. With that being said, I think rather than hiring a full-time position, we probably should have them investigate this position, come back with what the position would do if we had an economic development person. And maybe it doesn't have to be a full-time position. Maybe it could be a consultant or somebody on the staff that could support the chamber. But the more I thought about it, I was actually initially in agreement with the mayor, but I think waiting a little while they get a president in place, and at least being able to consider, so that at the end of the year we could evaluate what a position like that would look like, or could the town manager reshuffle? Well, we don't have resources on staff, but is there somebody on the staff that could be reaching out to businesses or working with the chamber? The problem right now is there's no support. The chamber's down to one person. They're working through their challenges. So we need them to get a president in place. We need them to step up and do what they were doing before. Over the last 3 or 4 years, under Sarah Gaskel's leadership, we saw the number of jobs coming into Morrisville significantly increase. I don't know whether you felt like that. Microsoft 500, Reliance Learning, INC Research, even in your first term, we were cutting a lot of ribbons and a lot of expansions. So that means that something was being done correctly. So, so I don't know whether we should, but if staff could investigate this and come back about what a position may look like, or should we have this conversation with the chamber? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas. I think the issue at hand is we have to figure out a way to get dollars and resources into the hands of the businesses quicker. And it could be getting people more aware of the Wake Forward program, getting the commissioners here. You can't do it at town hall, but so anyway, I just think those are my thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. Our communications department has been really good about sharing out info that's coming around.
But I appreciate your bringing this up, and I think maybe there's something that we can figure out this year.
Yeah, they've indicated the president might not be in place till August, so that's still a few months away. But I like the idea of trying to do everything we can to support our business community. Did anyone have any other thoughts on that? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'll just add one thing. Let's not get the cart before the horse. I'm not sure I want our staff to look into anything right now.
Okay, yeah, I just was.
I think Councilmember Rao is right. We've had a long-standing, great partnership with the Morrisville Chamber of Commerce, and they have done great work here in town, and that partnership is valuable. I think if we're going to look at changing that model, we do it with our partner. So I'd like to wait until they've hired their president, and we as a council then can decide how and what we may want to do. And we already have a contract in place with them right now for our economic development support. So that contract's in place for a year. So I think we continue the great relationship with them, and I'm going to be really frank. I mean, they've been fabulous until this situation in just the last couple of months. I'm not going to rate or comment on an organization's last 2 to 3 months versus their 20 plus years of work that they've done. They're in a tough situation like we are, quite frankly. Their revenues, I don't know their financial situation, but I know our financial situation. They may be in as tough a spot as we are. So, I don't know, to kick a really strong partner when they're down right now just leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. That is just not the way I conduct myself and how I am professionally. So I think you cannot rate an organization on just the last couple of months within these challenging times when they've been a fabulous partner and has done what Councilmember Rao has talked about.
Yeah, I agree. They've done great work. And I'm not saying that we should supplant them. I'm saying we should expand our services. We should be able to do more, because when the town manager talks about succession planning, when we lose a department head, we want to be in a position to replace it and keep the business going. So I'm not indicating that I want to stop the contract with the chamber. I do not want to change that relationship. I want to make it stronger. I want to grow it. I want to serve all the businesses in Morrisville all the time, even when we have a crisis. That's how we can build resilience. And I think right now we've shown that on this point, we're not as resilient as we need to be to help our business community. So I see it as an opportunity, and I do not want to let it be seen that I am against the chamber in any way. The chamber does great work. They have done great work in the past. They will do great work in the future. They are a great partner. We can put some more skin in the game to support our businesses in a more active and proactive way. So that's what I'm indicating.
So that goes back to my comment about you're putting the cart before the horse. Let's have a discussion about what this council wants or needs or feels is important instead of solving before we have a discussion. I am 100% behind having discussion about an issue or concern or how to move forward on something, but to jump to a solution, that's not, I think that's problematic, quite frankly. And frankly, I'm not hearing a lot of support. So we can, I think, you poll everybody and let's move on. We've got other things to coalesce around.
My final point, though, I would
Councilmember Rao.
The final point I would make is the business community listening, because I know a few people were watching the meetings, is that we need your ideas. If you're listening to this meeting tonight about the town of Morrisville and the support of business or the chamber, now is the time to send us your ideas. And I think that they have to get their the chamber has to get their administrative and financial structures back in place. But to the extent that the board of directors or any of you are listening, whatever you can do to possibly accelerate that process, I think would be a good thing, because we need your support to figure it out. And I want to see more ideas back and forth between us and the chamber about, or their board of directors, about what the options are. I mean, there are engines where money could be raised through like an angel conduit. And if the town of Fuquay Varina, they're a great town, can raise $350,000 to $400,000, I can tell you, with the business community we have here, with community fund and everything, we could do a really, really good job doing that.
I think this is the problem. You're talking about two different things, quite frankly.
Well, no, we're not.
You're talking about a staff member. You're talking about programming.
But he made a point that the chamber president's not going to be till August, right? Mm-hmm. And during that period of time, we need to figure out how we get more dollars in the hands of businesses who aren't getting the loans. That's all I'm saying. That may not be requiring a staff position, but I want the business community listening tonight to say, if you have an idea about how we can help the chamber, how you help in Morrisville, shoot the council an email. We need your ideas. Radio silence does not do anything for us. And I'm not saying the chamber's doing that, on purpose, but I think that we can figure this out. That's all I'm saying. But I want them to listen to that message because I want emails coming in. I want ideas that they can circulate so we can do something.
Yeah, the chamber has been proactive and took a survey of
They
the
are,
members and things
yes.
like that. So they are actively doing what they can with what they have.
Okay, I beat that dead horse. Thank you. We're done. Sorry.
Councilmember Fender.
I would just like to go back to talking about the budget.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
To that end, I noted in my comments that 124 acres is something that is aspirational from our Parks and Rec master plan. Not sure if we're going to be able to get to it, but I think just like we're doing a couple of years ago, a penny for roadways, I think it would send a strong statement if we took a penny for parks and allocate a penny in budgets going forward for parks to acquire parkland and to move forward on greenways and new parks. So that's just something I wanted to float as well at this point to see if there's any comments about that.
So the only comment I make about that is we talked about doing a Parks and Recs bond, and that absolutely can be a part of that bond.
You mean to pay for the bond?
When you advertise for a bond, well, let's back up. Well, we were going to have public input this spring to get from the public what they wanted to see in a bond. If we had been able to do that in a robust way, and that was one of the reasons why we delayed the bond this year, that might be one of those things that would pop up from our citizens, and that could be incorporated into a bond package to say, go out and purchase parkland. So there's ways for us to continue moving in that direction. To purchase, that's my hope anyhow, that will be something that ends up in a bond. Not just projects, but purchase of parkland.
So whether you're using a bond or general fund or CIP, the sooner we start building up funds to buy the parkland that we need, the sooner we are able to do it. And anything from the tax rate is actually interest-free. So that's why I would try to get in front of it a little bit. Because our parkland payment in lieu is going to be pretty much set down to zero after we do the Nature Park and Morrisville Community Park Stage 3. So I'm looking to rebuild that, even though we do have PIL in the coming in through new development. It's just a way to get to our destination sooner.
Council has not made a decision on how to pay for the nature park.
True, but it's got to come from somewhere. So
Understand that.
okay, not seeing much support for that one. So that's possibly a future discussion about if we want to ask staff if there's some way to start to have a plan to address that deficit from our Parks and Rec side. So that's the start of a discussion at some point. Okay, so at this point, I'd pass back to staff if you want to try to summarize what you heard. You want to just bring us back something next Thursday. What does staff feel is a good thing? Because you've heard a lot. Town Manager Page.
So I believe that I've heard 36 cents is what I've heard, which is 3.5 cents over a revenue neutral tax rate and 0.5 cent less than my original proposed budget. And my takeaways were if there were additional modifications at that level that would increase the roadway transportation reserve, take into account one traffic safety officer and additional sustainability initiatives, council would be satisfied with that budget overall.
Now is the time to speak up if you have any thoughts about that statement. Okay, as was mentioned, thank you so much to my fellow council members, to staff, to all the residents who have given input to this point. Next Thursday, we're going to be meeting again at 6 p.m. Town Manager, is that accurate?
Council should discuss that. We got agreement to start these work sessions at 6 o'clock, but we did not talk about beyond the May sessions.
Okay, is 6 okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Seeing head nods here, would the virtual group like to chime in on 6 o'clock pro or against?
Sorry, we're talking about next
Next
Thursday. Why
Thursday.
do we need to have a meeting next Thursday? We just,
To go over what she
I was
presents
gonna
to us. Councilmember
Can we
Rabati?
do it?
Councilmember Rabati?
Can we do it on the 9th?
Yeah, I typed yes in the chat, but yes, I'm fine either way.
Okay. Sounds like 6 o'clock would be good. That way, the following Tuesday.
Mayor,
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, go ahead.
I don't really know why we have to have a meeting on the 4th. We can receive the revised budget. We've landed on a, in a good place. I'm just not seeing why we need extra time.
I would weigh in that it's important for the residents to have an opportunity to see what we have crafted so that on Tuesday, the 9th, they're in a position to give public input. I think it would be hard for a resident to follow everything that's just happened.
But I agree that they can see what's happened because that can be published to the budget portal, and the public hearing is on the 9th.
I
So
believe that a short meeting on
I don't think we should
next
meet
Thursday
to
is a
meet.
good idea. Okay, that is noted. Councilmember Scroggins
I
Johnson.
think we should consider that. Can I speak, please? This is a work session, and I'm not there, so I can't use my hands to show you what I'm saying, which I typically do. I'm really impressed with what we did tonight. It's very hard for me to go above revenue neutral, knowing the impact on so many families and, stakeholders and businesses. But I think that we have a valuable way forward. And I don't understand why we need to deliberate longer. I just think that Jeannie and Martha have done an excellent job. I heard council members agreeing on trade-offs. Are we good, or what are we going to meet about next week? I really don't think we need to meet. So that's what I want to talk about. Not 6 p.m. or 6:30, but what would we talk about?
Councilmember Fender?
Well, I'm just wondering, I don't want to meet if we don't need to meet, but I'm just wondering whether it's worthwhile to at least come back once before the June 9th meeting to at least review what the staff brings back to us so we can, in case there are more modifications that we want to make, or there's some other questions we have. I mean, maybe it's only an hour meeting. So are we expecting the June 9th meeting to be for public comment?
Yes, that's a public hearing that's required by law.
Yeah, then I think the June 4th meeting is needed. So we can just come back and all nod our heads and bless it before putting it in front of the public. Because we don't know exactly what it's going to look like until what they bring back, until we see it.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Does anyone else have any comments on that?
so I'm not sure the meeting needs to be an hour. It probably is going to be more like a 5-minute meeting. So would it be okay? How quickly can you put into a spreadsheet what we all talked about and what you recapped for us, Martha?
Tomorrow.
So could we do this? Why don't we have staff put this together? They can send it to us, and if there's no problems, then we don't need to meet again. I think I agree. You need to see it. I don't disagree. I do think we need to see it. that would be sufficient for me.
Well, what about an option if we meet virtually on the 4th? Maybe we tentatively meet on the 4th. If we decide after seeing it, we need to come back together and
I think that's a great idea.
Get
Then it's formally
consensus.
out there as part of an agenda, so the residents can see it, and we get a good look at it, and we can discuss it. I think that's a really good compromise.
I would be in favor of a virtual meeting.
Councilmember Rao?
I think that's a good, I mean, I think there's no reason to meet if we've already agreed on a budget. But however, in this circumstance where we haven't had, because public isn't coming in, there's less of a chance for public engagement and comments. So I think it would be better to be, just one more time, virtual meeting, so it's on the agenda, like you said, but people can come in, they can chime in, they can watch. And then on the 9th, we've just at least shown it before we come in. Because it's different, because otherwise, you go the 9th, and then when people are watching these meetings, they're going to the virtual meetings, or watching these meetings online. So I say, I think it's a good idea, virtual. At least that way, it's a meeting on the record with an agenda. Public can view it.
So I'm hearing general okay with 6 p.m. virtual meeting next Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Knowing us, it won't be 5 minutes, but we'll try.
No, it won't be 5 minutes.
well, if it's
That's
5,
a
it's
jinx.
5.
What?
Okay. Great. Yeah, and as soon as the agenda is done, that's when we really ask for some serious public input to make sure that people are okay with it, they understand it, because that's where we're at right now, barring hearing different things from the public. Okay, Councilmember Rabati, please.
Yeah, I'm fine with meeting virtually for however long it takes, but I do think that we should make some kind of commitment to each other to not beat the dead horses that we have already either come to consensus on not supporting or come to consensus on supporting. I think that we should make an effort, a real effort, to make that meeting as efficient as possible. So everybody come with their concerns or their questions, get them answered, get them addressed, and let's keep moving forward on the budget. Let's not talk in circles around each other.
Sounds like a good plan. Does staff, any other final council comments before I pass to staff? Okay, hearing none, does staff have anything at this time? Okay, so next Thursday at 6 p.m. And then the following Tuesday will be our public hearing on June 9th, also at 6 p.m. And that will be back to the hybrid format at that time. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion from Councilmember Rao, a second from Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. If Town Clerk Smith could please do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Fender,
Aye.
Councilmember Garamella, Councilmember Rao,
Aye.
Councilmember Robati,
Aye.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Cawley.
Aye.
The motion to adjourn passes.
Okay, it is 8:45. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.